All right, are you ready to make a crocheted star? This is such a cool project. I always like to do something crochet at Christmas time because, well, it's a little bit faster, and I think this is kind of a fun thing to do. So let's begin by winding up your skein of yarn. So you've got a nice little packet of a 50-gram skein of Epic, RCY Epic yarn, 100% wool in your package. And so the first thing we have to do is turn it into a ball, because if we don't do that, we might end up with a little bit of a tangled mess. Now you'll see on your skein that you'll have, looks like 1, 2, 3 areas which are tied. Just going to show you this here. So if you open up your skein, you'll see that you've got 3 sections which have little ties on them like this. So using your scissors, you can cut each tie. I usually just cut the little knot off. If your fingers are nimble and you can undo that knot, that's also an option, but feel free to cut it off. That's okay too. I'm going to do that because my fingers are not so nimble. Okay, and then find the other end of that tie. So I've just cut off the knot from this end of the tie, and you'll see that it's just kind of wound through my skein here. I'm going to find the opposite end, or where it's been folded, and I'm going to pull that off. And this one was not attached to my yarn, so I'm just going to put it aside. I'll maybe find a use for that later. And I'm going to go to the next one. So again, I'm just going to trim off the knot, and I'm going to find the other end of that tie right here, and I'm going to pull it like that, and it also comes completely off. And now I go to the third knot, or the third tie, sorry. I'm going to cut that one off. And I'm going to go down here. Now, here's something that's really interesting. Instead of this wrap going all the way around, do you see how it's kind of folded here? That means that this tie is actually the one that has the beginning and end. This is not a tie. This one is actually part of my yarn, and so they've used it to create a tie to keep that skein nice and secure and untangled while we work it. So with this one, I'm going to pull on the outside strand again to loosen it up. But here you'll see that these ones don't come off, so they're actually attached to my skein of yarn. Okay, now I'm going to keep those 2 pieces kind of separate and available to me. Here's where it would be a really good thing if I had a friend to come and hold my yarn open for me, or if I had a Swift to put my skein on to hold the skein open for me. But if you don't have that, you can hang your skein on a doorknob. You can put it over the back of 2 chairs, but it's a good idea to secure it in some manner in order to wind it into a ball. So I'm going to move this skein of yarn over to my dining room and put it on the back of 2 chairs. Be back in a sec. So I do have a Swift, but just in case you don't, I've set up my little mini skein here on the back of 2 chairs, as you can see. And now I'm just going to wind it into a ball. And here you can see my ends dangling. There's one end that's just coming off the outside of the skein, and here's the other end that's sort of tucked to the inside of the skein. So I'm going to wind my ball using the outside of the skein, and I'm just going to wind it into a nice little center pull ball here. Okay, so here we are. I'm just going to wind this up into a ball. So I'm just going to get a little bit of the yarn ready here, and I'm going to wind it around my thumb in kind of a sideways direction. See how it's kind of going at an angle here? Every time I need more yarn, I'm just going to pull it off the back of these 2 chairs. If that happens to you, don't worry, just pop it back on. and keep winding. If you want a center pull ball, the trick is to keep the inside of the yarn tucked into your fingers here so it doesn't get wound up into your ball. All right, every now and then you're just going to turn your little ball on your thumb, quarter turn rotation. And this makes a really nice center pull ball. So it's a little bit tedious, but the important things here are just to keep your yarn from tangling up by having it around the back of the two chairs like this, or having someone else hold it, and to just keep winding with your thumb in the center, the original tail in your fingers, and turning a quarter turn every now and then. All right, so now my ball is wound up and I'm almost ready to work. The next thing we need for this project is some embroidery floss. So this is because we're going to create a really pretty marl look in our in the Christmas crocheted star. So this is a packet of embroidery floss from your Advent kit, and you can use the embroidery floss. You can use the entire thing. So I just took off the two little wrappers here, and I'm going to find the end. So if you want, you can use this strand together with your wool, or if you'd like to make your marl a little less a little more white and a little less of the other color that you've got, you can split this up into two portions. Either way, you should wind it up into a little smaller container component than you have here. So if you want to use all 4 strands, or if you want to split it up, I'll show you how to do that. I've just taken a large post-it note and folded it in half, and I'm going to fold it in half again to create a little bobbin for my embroidery floss. A business card works really well for this as well. And I'm just going to wind the embroidery floss around this little piece of paper. And it's okay if I wind over top of my tail, because I'm not going to worry about this as a center pull component. Okay, so this is winding your embroidery floss. Just be very careful not to get it tangled up. There we go. You just want it to kind of reel off your little circle, nice and easy. And again, you can wind it onto anything you like. This little bit of paper is working just fine, but a business card or an empty toilet paper roll, or a quote-unquote proper bobbin, if you have one, will work nicely as well. All right, so now I can use my little bobbin of embroidery floss and my ball of wool, and I can combine them together, and it'll give me a beautifully marled yarn like this. But if I want my marl to be less noticeable, then I can split up the embroidery floss. This embroidery floss has 6 strands to it, so I've just split it into two components of 3 strands each. And now that I've got it started like this, I can just continue to pull on it. But again, you want to make sure that you don't get a knot forming in there. So I'm going to cut a little slit into my paper. I'm going to tuck the end in here, and I'm going to hold it up as I do this so that it can untangle to where my little slit is. And then as I do this, I'm going to wind each of these strands onto separate pieces of paper like this. Hang on while I get one more piece of paper. So pull off a little bit from your 6 strands, park it into the middle of your paper, then split it up. It works easier if you can hold your little paper up. Here we go. Unwind a portion of it and then wind it onto your separate little components. So I'm getting down to the end here, and I just wanted to remind you that, like all things at Christmas time, patience is a virtue. It pays to take your time. So even when you get down to the very end here, don't be tempted to take everything off your original little skein here. In order to unwind these strands nicely, it does need to have a little bit of weight attached to it. Otherwise, you'll find it just kind of tangles up. So keep it attached to your original little piece of paper while you continue to wind it onto your 2 little bobbins. The other thing is that I split this one up as 2 strands of 3 each. If you wanted to have 1 strand or 2 strands instead of 3, I would recommend that you also just split it up as 4 strands on one side and 2 strands on the other, and then you can further split up your 4-strand bobbin afterwards. So now that I'm getting down here to the very end, I can just undo my 2 strands. There we go, and I've got 2 little bobbins of 3 strands each. And I'm going to proceed with one of my little bobbins and my crochet yarn. So here we go, let's get started. To do the crochet component, you're going to need your crochet hook. I have a different one here because I'm filming this before the box goes out, so I haven't got one of the ergonomic crochet hooks, but your hook is going to work really nicely for you. So I've got a 4mm crochet hook. I've got my cotton yarn, and I've got my epic yarn. I've got a locking stitch marker. This comes in really handy. I've got a wool needle, and I've got a pair of scissors. Okay, the wool needle and the scissors will come in at the end. Let's start with your yarn. So holding your epic yarn and your additional strand of yarn together, we'll start with a slip knot. Okay, so holding your cotton and your epic yarn together, we're going to start with a slip knot. And put that on your hook. And then holding your yarn in your left hand, because that's how we crochet, you're going to begin by chaining 5. To do a chain stitch, you take your hook that's in your right hand, the yarn that's over your left hand, slip your hook under the yarn, and pull it through the slip knot on your hook. Then again, under the yarn from the front and through the stitch on your hook. Your left fingers come up to support the stitches underneath the hook. yarn over and go through. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now we're going to use a slip stitch. I'm just going to get some yarn ready here. Use a slip stitch to join these 5 chains into a circle. So that just means that you're going to insert your hook into the first chain stitch, the slip knot that you made, so that you have 2 loops on your hook. You'll yarn over once from the front to the back and pull it through both loops on your hook, and now you have a little circle. I'm going to slide my tail over here to the left so that I can kind of bury it as I go. So that's why that's over there. Now the first instruction for round 2 is to chain 2. 1, 2, and then we're going to slip a locking stitch marker onto the head of that second chain, and that you just do by taking your hook out, grab your locking stitch marker, lock it, place it over the head of the stitch, and then put your hook back in. This is a nice way to mark that stitch, and it makes it easier to do what you have to do at the end of the round. So just take my word for it, slip that locking stitch marker on there and proceed with the rest of the pattern. 2 double crochets, and we're going into the center of the circle here. So there's 1 double crochet. For those of you, if you don't remember, a double crochet is to yarn over your needle or your hook before it goes into the center of the circle. Bring your hook through the center of the circle, grab the yarn from underneath and pull it back through the center of the circle, and then yarn over one more time, go through 2 loops on your hook, yarn over again, and go through 2 loops on your hook. So we've done the chain 2, we've done 2 double crochets, and now the instructions say to chain 3. 1, 2, 3, and then you're going to work 3 more double crochets. So let's go here again. Yarn over through the center of the chain, yarn over again, bring that back through the center so that you have 3 wraps on your hook, yarn over one more time and draw through 2 wraps, yarn over again and draw through 2 wraps. That is 1 double crochet. I've got to make 3 of them. Okay, I'm gonna free up some more yarn for me here. There are my 3 double crochets, and then it says to chain 3. And before the 3 double crochets, there was a little asterisk. So the pattern says, repeat from the asterisk 4 times. So I've done this once, and now I'm going to do it 3 more times. 4 times in total. So 3 double crochets. Then chain 3. You see that my cotton has a little bit of extra twist in here, so I'm just going to smooth it down as I go. Okay, so I'm going to do this again. 1 double crochet, 2, and 3 double crochets, and then chain 3. Get yourself a little more yarn. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, but this was the first one. I had to do it 4 more times, so you need a total of 5 of these double crochet clusters all together. So just keep pushing your yarn down to free up a little more of that original chain space, and put in your last set of 3 double crochets. And 3 chains. 1, 2, 3. And now what we're going to do is join this chain 3 to the top, to the beginning of the round, and so that's where the stitch marker comes in really handy, because getting your hook under there is difficult, but also finding that spot is really hard. So we're going to join the round together with a slip stitch. I'm just going to take the head of my crochet hook, slide it underneath where my stitch marker is, yarn over, bring that yarn through and through the stitch on my hook. Now I'll take my stitch marker out, put it down just for a second, and we'll begin round 2. I mean round 3. Here we go. All right, ready for round 3. We're going to start with a chain 3. 1, 2, 3. We're going to place the marker as we did on the previous round, so just take your hook out, lock your locking stitch marker, slide it over the head of the stitch, put your hook back in. Then you're going to turn, so we're just going to flip your work around. So again, I'm finishing here. I'm just going to flip my crocheted star around, and we're going to work 2 double crochets in the chain 3 space. This is the chain 3 space, those big little loops between your double crochet clusters is the chain 3 space. So 2 double crochets in here, 1 and 2, and then chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and we're going to work, where are we here? We're going to work another 3 double crochets in this same chain 3 space. So push those original first 2 double crochets back and work another 3 double crochets in that same space. That first chain 3 counts as 1 double crochet. So we've got a little pattern evolving here with the chain 3, 2 double crochets, chain 3, 3 double crochets in here, and then we get into the repeated section. No, sorry, not yet. Let's just review here. We worked chain 3, 2 double crochets in the chain 3 space, then do chain 3, 3 double crochets in the same chain 3 space, and then chain 1. And now we get to the repeated section, so that's 3 double crochets in the next chain 3 space, 1 double crochet, 2 double crochets, 3 double crochets. Then you're going to chain 3 and work 3 more double crochets in the same chain 3 space. And we're going to repeat this 4 times to end up with our 5-pointed star. So I've done that once. I'm going to do it 3 more times. There's a chain 1 at the end of this sequence. There's 1, 2, 3 more holes to fill. So it's kind of a memorable sequence. 3 double crochets, chain 3, 3 double crochets, chain 1. The chain 3 in the middle of this starts to help us form the pointy part of the star. And the chain 1 in between these clusters just helps us move from one segment to the other. Okay, so I'm going to chain 1 and do my little pattern repeat again. So we're at the end of round 3 here, and the next instruction is to slip stitch into the top of the chain 3 that we began with. So that's where your marker is. So you're just going to insert your hook into the space where your marker is, yarn over, draw it through, and pull it through the loop that's on your hook, and you can remove your marker. Okay, let's get ready to start round 4. All right, here we are at the beginning of round 4. I've just done my slip stitch into the top of the round, and so I'm beginning the instructions on round 4. So we begin with a chain 1 this time, and again you're going to put your locking stitch marker onto the head of that stitch. There we go, just slip it on, put it in place, and then you're going to turn your work again. And this time it says 4 double crochets, 3 chain 3, 4 double crochets in the next chain 3 space. So let's take a look at where that is. It's not right here. This was a chain 1. So the next chain 3 space is actually over here. So you're going to work those next set of instructions into this chain 3 space over to your left. So that is 4 double crochets. And then chain 3 and another 4 double crochets, all in the same chain 3 space. And then, oops, I just need to get myself a little more yarn over here. All right. And then 1 single crochet in the next chain 1 space. So the chain 1 space is this little kind of square space in between these double crochet clusters. So you're going to do a single crochet in this space. To do a single crochet, you're just going to take your hook and not yarn over first. You're just going to dip it right into that chain 1 space. Pull up the yarn from the other side, so yarn over and pull up the yarn so that you have 2 loops on your hook, and then you will yarn over and pull through both loops. It's a nice tight little stitch that will make your star pointier. And then we go back to the instructions, so that's 4 double crochets, chain 3, 4 double crochets. So 4 double crochets, chain 3, 4 double crochets, single crochet, 4 double crochets, chain 3, 4 double crochets. And again, a single crochet in the chain 1 space, so that's just put your hook into the space, yarn over from behind so that you have 2 loops on your hook, and then yarn over one more time to create a single crochet, and continue on all the way around. On one of my rounds, I've run out of embroidery floss, and so I don't have enough to complete the round. So I'm going to just show you a little trick here. I'm going to pull back on this round, and I'm going to separate my strands so that I have two equal components of yarn. I'm just going to go back to the beginning here where I had my marker in. And so to complete my star and have the same color all the way around, I'm going to just take this strand out, separate it, and pull it apart so that I have 2 strands to complete my round. So just want to explain that, you know, if you do run out and you don't have any more, that is something you can do. Just make sure that when you do it, you take your time and you don't get into too much of a rush. All right, so here I'm working with 2 strands. And I'm going to start up here. Just to separate them. It's better to start closer to your hook than to go too far away. And I'm going to wind this one onto my piece of paper. I find my other piece of paper. Wind this one on. Okay, so I've got my 2 little mini bobbins now, and I'm just going to cut one of these. There we go, leave the other one attached, and continue on using just the single strand for this last row of my work. It's wound the wrong way on my piece of paper because I had to wind it close to my yarn, but I can transfer it now, so just going to take a minute to do that. So that the yarn that's closest to my hook is on the outside of my little bobbin here. Alright, so here I am back at the beginning of round 1. Did my chain 1, I've turned my work, it was like this, now it's like this, and I'm going to do my 4 double crochets in this next chain 3 space. Chain 3 in between, 4 double crochets in the same space, and then again with the single crochet, insert your hook into the chain 1 space, yarn over, bring that yarn over forward so that you have 2 loops on your hook, yarn over one more time and bring it through both loops on your hook, and then back to chain 4 double crochets in the next chain 3 space. So 1, if you're not sure what's going on, you can always undo it. There we go. And get back on track. So I'm going to do another double crochet here. Sometimes that embroidery floss just gets a little wrapped up in your work. Single crochet in the center here. And now I'm beginning to run out of my embroidery floss, so this is a good time to show you how I carry on. So I'm just going to take my new bit of embroidery floss, and I'm just going to overlap them a little bit like this and continue on. Okay, and just going to incorporate that there. Don't worry too much about it when I'm done, because I've overlapped them. I'm not worried about it coming apart or anything like that. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to just weave that tail in afterwards. You see how it just sticks to the yarn? It's I've got a little tail over here, so it's all good. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 double crochets. I'm going to do a single crochet here and 4 double crochets over here. Right, when you've completed your last set of 4 double crochets in the remaining chain 3 space, then all that's left to do is a slip stitch into the top of the chain 1 that we began with, and so that's where your marker is. So we're just going to do a slip stitch in here. There we go. And then you're going to cut your yarn, leaving a 4 to 6 inch tail. And with your hook, just pull on that loop to pull it free like this, and undo your locking stitch marker, and I'll show you how to weave in that end so it looks nice and neat and secure. So here where I changed my yarn and I have my little threads hanging out, I'm just going to trim those off. Okay, and then we'll deal with weaving in the ends and weaving in this end in particular in just a second. So because I only used one strand of the embroidery floss on the outside of my star, it's a little lighter. The marling is a little lighter than it is in the center. But I think it looks really nice, and it's the same color, and that's, to me, that's what's important. So maybe next time I'll just do the entire thing with just one strand, and that might work out. Give me a little more yarn to work with. Okay, let's weave in the ends. Let's begin with this one here because it's the one we just finished with. So I'm going to remove my locking stitch marker and pick up a wool needle. You would like to thread both strands, the cotton and the wool, onto your wool needle. Okay, and then we're just going to make sure that this doesn't pull apart by giving it a little snug up, and then I'm going to put it through the stitch. The would be like the next stitch that I was going to work in. You can put it through like this, or you can make a nice little kind of crochet join by putting your wool needle under the two bars, the sort of the braided edge of the side of your star here, pulling the yarn through, and then going right back into, let's see here, right back into the place where your yarn is coming out. Make this a bit wider here. See where my yarn's coming out? I'm going to go right back into that same space, and I'm just going to pull on it tight enough to make it look like one long continuous chain there. Now, to weave in this end here, I don't really want to have, it would be nice if I didn't have a right side or a wrong side, particularly since we were turning the work. So I'm just going to weave in the tail along the edge of the star, going under that chain edge, back and forth like this. Sometimes splitting the yarn if possible, because that makes it the woven in end stay in place longer. So just keep weaving it in until you're in danger of running out of yarn, and it's going to pull out of your needle. And on the last pull through, I'm just going to go through, I'm going to take my wool needle and split the yarn and go through the go right through the strands. You should feel some resistance. That's good. Pull it through, and then we'll just go down like this. Okay, take my needle out. Give everything a good tug along the side, and then when you trim your yarn, trim it and leave just a tiny bit sticking out like that, because after you wash it, that's going to pop right back in there. You're not going to even see it. Even now, if I just sort of push it down against the fabric, you can't see that end. Okay, same thing with these little tails of embroidery floss. This one's very short, so I'm just going to tuck it inside here by putting my wool needle through the wool, through the stitches, threading as best I can those embroidery flosses through my wool needle, and pull it through just to secure it. Okay, and then I'll take my scissors and trim it, but not right next to the fabric, just a little ways away. Okay, and now we'll deal with this one here. So same thing, I'm just going to kind of tuck it in, taking my wool needle, because the tail itself is short, taking my wool needle and just kind of threading it through where I would like that strand of yarn to go, and then I'm going to thread it, pull it through away from the edge, trim it close, but not right on there. Okay, this tail I buried as I was going through my first round, but if you didn't do that and you'd like to bury it after the fact, here's what you do. Thread your wool needle like this, and then insert your wool needle under those strands of yarn. You may have to go through it a few times like this. And you can pull it tight, and then again trim it, and you're done. The next step is, so we want this to be, we want this to dangle without flopping or being, you know, being sad. So you've been crocheting this quite densely. The next thing is to crochet a chain to make a little hanger for it. And while you're doing that, you can give this a little bath. When the wool gets wet, it will plump up a little bit, so that'll make it stiffer again. So go ahead and fill up your sink with a little warm water. Cold water is fine too, not hot. And put your star in to soak. And then let it lay flat to dry. If you want to insert some pins just to make those corners a little pointier, you can as well. All right, we'll come back to do the hanger. I want a bit of a thinner strand of the DMC cotton for working the chain or the hanger for our crocheted star. So I'm just splitting up my 3 strands into a set of 2 strands and a set of 1 strand, and then I'm going to begin making the chain hanger. So I'm going to save this single strand of my DMC cotton for another project in a little bit, and I'm going to use my 2 strand of DMC cotton to make a hanger for the Christmas star that I just finished. So again, I'm just going to start with a slip knot. There we go. And I'm going to chain for as long as I think I need to make my hanger. Now, as you saw just there, the little slip knot likes to, if you pull here and you pull on it, it can tighten up. So I'm going to keep it on the main part of my crochet hook, and with my thumb and finger just pinch the little knot that's at the bottom, and you're just going to chain. And take your time because cotton doesn't have any memory and it likes to be a little bit splitty. You may find that just doing a single strand is good enough. As you go, you can try it in your, fold it in half and try it with your star to see if it's the length that you think will be good. I'm going to do a few more chains here. And then when you get to the end, just cut your yarn. You don't have to leave a long tail now. Pull that last chain free on your hook, so just use your hook to pull it out. Give it a little yoink like that. Okay, and there is a crochet chain hanger. You can just thread it through one of the points in your star. And here I'm just going to put a little knot in. I'm going to cut it fairly close. Oops. See, I cut it too close, so I'm going to put another knot in there. Okay, made that knot as tight as possible. I'm just going to trim off the end there. Maybe I just won't pull. Well, yep, throw caution to the wind, Cynthia. It's good. It's going to hold now. All right, and there is my completed star with hanger. Merry Christmas.